Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal, and I'm here with my colleagues Kim Strassel and Bill McGurn. Kim, let's follow up on Bill's point in the end of the first segment here, where he talked about the implications of this for President Biden. The president has said in the past that he had never talked to his son about his business dealings and his business dealings with foreigners. The White House has shifted that line now to saying the president was never in business with Hunter Biden, though it doesn't acknowledge that its line changed, but it clearly has changed because the evidence, as Bill suggested, has built that the president really did know about Hunter's business dealings and, in fact, had, according to testimony from others, had been involved in some speakerphone calls. That's what Devon Archer, a former Hunter business partner, is expected to testify to when he appears before the Congress. And then, of course, there's the famous email in which Hunter Biden says, my father is right here next to me. He was telling a Chinese business partner, if you don't cough up what is expected of you, it's going to go very badly for you. So what does this collapse of this plea deal mean for the president?
Well, we're going to get a lot more information here probably in the coming weeks as the House Republicans really begin to drill down on Hunter's former business partners. And as you mentioned, one of those who was central to most of his dealings is Devon Archer. He's scheduled to testify behind closed doors on Monday. But there are some other ones too. James Gillar, Tony Bobulinski, who we know publicly. There are a few others. These guys are all getting depositions to come in and sit down and say what they know. And look, they're going to be able to give information on this. One of these guys was indeed interviewed by the FBI. We found that out from the IRS whistleblowers who acknowledged Joe Biden's presence at a meeting. He wasn't asked much about this because the FBI shut down the questioning once it started to get interesting. That was one of the complaints of these IRS whistleblowers, that they have been told specifically not to ask questions about the president's knowledge or interaction with his son's business dealings. But House Republicans will have no such qualms. In fact, this is the main reason they're bringing them in. And I think the president, that may be why you've seen that walk back in the language, because the question of whether or not funds were taken by him in the end is obviously the big one. But I think we're about to get a lot more information that he was there, that Hunter used him to facilitate things, and that would make a lot more sense in the context of some of those emails and language. Then the question will be whether or not you can follow the money in such a way that any of it ended up benefiting Joe Biden.
The evidence is very clear already that Hunter Biden was using the family name and invoking his father as part of his attempt to get money from foreigners, and ostensibly for fees and various services. But for what kind of services, it's never been clear, other than a kind of vague access to certain political actors and perhaps to then Vice President Biden or former Vice President Biden and potentially future President Biden. So he was basically selling influence. That's one big question that needs, and whether Joe Biden was participating in that. Second is the famous line from Tony Bobulinski that was exposed by former business partner of Hunter's, Tony Bobulinski, that there would be 10% for the big guy. And who is the big guy? Is that Joe Biden? Bill, is whether or not Joe Biden received any money from all of this significant?
Yes, it is. I would just add one thing on the allegations. In the FBI form that Chuck Grassley released to the public, it says that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were paid to run interference for Burisma. So, yes. So there's a clear allegation. It hasn't been proved, but it's out there. I would say another thing, on all things you mentioned, all the people like the IRS witnesses, Tony Bobulinski, none of them have changed their story. And no one's really accused them of lying. They only say there's no evidence. No one directly confronts them and says you're lying about this. The people who have changed their stories, the White House, President Biden, David Weiss, all the other people, they constantly are changing their story. So you have to ask again, who's telling the truth? The real issue, Hunter Biden, yes, it's bad and sleazy if he used a family name to profit, but that's not really a public issue. The public issue is whether Joe was in on it, helped facilitate him, and that's what they're afraid of. And I think now it's getting much tougher because the allegations have more witnesses behind it and witnesses to the veracity. They have no reason to lie. And the stories on the other side are shifting.
I guess, Kim, the White House calculation, and Bill alluded to this earlier, is that all of these details, all of the reporting that the House committees are coming up with and the witnesses, that will all stay in a very small media group that you would call the conservative media. So the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, editorial page, Fox News, but not beyond that. And that they're betting that the mainstream press, I hate that phrase, but the left-wing press that dominates the American media landscape, how's that for adapting, is not going to touch this. They might report on it in glancing fashion, but they certainly aren't going to stick on it. They're not going to put a bunch of reporters on it. So it'll just die. And the plea deal goes ahead later and is confirmed and anointed by the judge. Then it'll all go away. Do you think that's a good bet by the White House?
Well, it's been a good bet up till now. It's worked very well for them. If you think about it, look, Tony Bobolinsky, who first came out and blew the whistle on some of this right before the 2020 election, at about the same time that news about Hunter's laptop broke and that was being censored. At that moment, there were so many details and information that he was offering. If the press had dug into this, who knows where we'd be on this story right now? A lot of this might not only be coming out thanks to whistleblowers. The press has resolutely ignored this all along because they wanted Joe Biden to be elected and they knew that Hunter was a liability. I think it is proving to be a poorer bet, though, because we do now have these whistleblowers. And it's becoming a story where those of us have written about it is we've done enough that it's becoming difficult for them to ignore. So you did see quite a few stories about the Hunter Biden trial and the implosion of this plea deal. Does that mean we're going to get a lot of more investigative work? No. But I think Democrats have got a problem if the best that they can do is just say there's no evidence, because there is mounting evidence. And as you noted, the White House has already had to backtrack some. The problem for the president, for me at this point, is not necessarily even what comes out so much. We don't know what will come out in terms of whether or not there was money exchanged hands. But do remember, when all of these things were taking place, Joe Biden was out of office. He was a private citizen. And you could very well imagine him thinking, well, maybe I won't get back into elected politics again. Maybe this is a way to have a little bit of income going down the road if I don't. Like just maybe setting up that scenario. But his problem now is having so forcefully denied having done any of it. If it comes out that he knows, that's where they're in trouble because he's going to look to be a liar.
All right. Kim Strassel and Bill McGurn, thanks for that update on the Hunter Biden episode. This is going to be a story we'll follow going forward. We'll follow it because the other folks won't. So you want the facts? Stick with us at the Wall Street Journal editorial page and our Potomac Watch podcast. Thanks to Bill. Thanks to Kim. Thank you all for listening. We're back every day with Potomac Watch.